First of all, I need to apologize for my voice. It's not what you think. I was not drinking last night. I was just catching an early summer flu. Quick introduction on myself. I got involved with virtual goods very early on in Asia, China specifically, back in 2003 when taking Shanda public, the first online gaming company in the States. And since then, being active in this space, advising big firms on it, but also founded a small company which brings together the brands and rights world with the gaming world. This is what we call Iconic Future, but this is not what the session is all about. I would like to introduce to you Nils-Holger Henning. He's one of the global experts in virtual goods. He is co-founder and very successful entrepreneur in a company called BigPoint, based out of Hamburg, Germany, and San Francisco, and other offices globally. And they did an amazing job to make a huge business out of virtual goods. And the way we want to approach the session is, first of all, we would like to understand a little bit who of you is advanced in virtual goods at all. Maybe you can raise your hand if you have ever worked or heard of virtual goods at all. So that's one or two. So it looks like we kind of start very on the beginner level then to teach you all about what it is all about. And then secondly, we want to go into a presentation of Niels, so where he gives you a little bit of a big picture and his specific knowledge about the space. And later on, we prepared a couple of questions, and Niels and myself are going to go into a quick dialogue. But as we are a small group, I think we could also take advantage of that to get your questions and try to answer them while we're here in the room, and certainly afterwards we're available too. Is that a good approach? You like it? Cool. All right, then Niels, the floor is yours.
So, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me here to the conference. As Malte introduced myself, it was written a little bit wrong. I'm not the COO, I'm in fact the CMO, so I'm in charge of everything commercial, the marketing, driving business to virtual goods, and the finance, what we are going to discuss right now. As we said before, I'm right now in the company, really early stage, building up BigPoint. I started about 6 years ago, and I came to MIP-TV about 4 or 5 years ago. First time, nobody was talking, in fact, about games, virtual goods. It was like something totally strange, and I had the feeling I'm coming here like an alien. But I'm really confident that it's changing from year to year, and also what I see right now is going, from my point of view, in the right direction. But right now, I want to give you, first of all, a little bit a dive into the topic and what we are going to talk about it. First, very short, the company I'm coming from, and many people, in fact, don't know about it. We were founded in 2002. It's right now more than 700 employees. It's even close to 800, actually. We expect even this year to hit the 1,000 employees. We have offices already all around the world. We're based in Hamburg with a headquarter. We're in Berlin with around 100 people. We have an office in Malta, in San Francisco, also around 100 people, in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. And when you really think about it, I mean, here's written 2002, we had the growth during the last 3.5, 4 years. So we were building this company, or in this year, 1,000 people company within 3-4 years. And this is what you will see further in the speed that we have currently. What's also pretty interesting about BigPoint, we have more than 70 games right now, operate them globally in 30 languages. But what's more interesting, I think, we have an audience, and that's bigger right now than 180 million people. And if you really think about 180 million people, it's by far more than in many European countries live, and it's more or less half the population in the US. And we are growing, and that's also quite an interesting number, every day with 250,000 signups. And just think about the number, and this shows you a little bit the speed currently in the virtual goods market. I thought I start with one very famous quote from Thomas Watson, and he was the chairman of IBM, and he was believing, it was quite a long while ago, but he was believing that the total market space for computers is maximum 5 computers globally. I think he was totally wrong. So it's a big mistake. And I think also currently what we see in the online space, mobile space, all the speed that's happening, it's totally underestimated. And I will show you why. First of all, we believe that web is king. Why is it king? Because there are 2 billion people already online. And also, if you have a look what happened over the last years, it's a massive speed. It's accelerating more and more. And when we come to mobile, suddenly in all these countries where we were saying before, it's somewhere emerging countries in the world, so hard to get a computer penetration, you will see that, or we always see that in maximum 2-3 years, all the people in India, China, Brazil, all the BRIC countries will have their smartphones, will access games, social content via their phones. They don't need a personal computer anymore, and they have their way in accessing content. And also, that's what we see, in fact, in the gaming space. There are more than 615 million active gamers already in the world. And this is even a number from 2009, so currently it should be even more. And especially we have something educating like social networks and driving more and more gamers, in fact. And something I also really liked about, I'm for many years already in the internet industry. I was before in AOL, and we knew at this time, always everyone was saying the biggest thing in the internet is porn. No, it's not anymore. It's right now social media. It overtook it. When you have a look at the statistics, you see already that 72% of the consumers living in the US, they play games, play video games. And something more that I want to bring into the round is, and I remember the times, and I was in AOL Time Warner at the time, and it was a strong music business and everything around a big group. And yes, music was big, and everyone was thinking about gaming. Even when I moved to the gaming industry a couple of years ago, they said, how can you go to gaming? It will never have a future. How can it grow? This is stable entertainment business if you're in TV, if you're in music or something. No, but in fact, if you really have a look at the numbers, you see that gaming, in fact, is already, or is going to be 3 times bigger than the music industry until 2014. And it's very difficult for the people being in the industry to realize it, but this is in fact the trend that we currently see. And it's going to rise from a 1.3 trillion business to a 1.7 trillion dollar business by 2014. I heard in the morning there was a session about Facebook. And if you really have a closer look into Facebook, what's going to happen over there, you will see that quite a lot of activity in Facebook is gaming. And latest we heard it from companies like Zynga, Playdom, Playfish, all the big acquisitions, everything was done over there, billions of dollars valuation suddenly in the market. Yeah, but it's in fact gaming. Even many people who are active on Facebook, they don't know that they play a game. They say, I never play games, I just compare who has the biggest brain, my friends or me. But in fact, what are they doing? They are playing a game. It's game mechanics. And in fact, they're active in gaming. And if you have a look at the Facebook numbers, you see that more than 50% of the Facebook audience are playing games. It's about 200 million people playing games monthly. What's in fact nearly the size of the population of the US. And 56 million people, in fact more than the population in England, are playing games daily. So games is not anymore this niche, nerd, medium. It's really something for everyone. And if you probably really ask yourself, I guess you got also somewhere, somehow in touch with games. But what's in the final end quite interesting about it, 20% of the people playing these games have spent some money for these games. And most of the spendings were done with microtransactions for virtual goods. And also coming directly by this to crazy valuations that you hear right now in the market, and everything that's happening around social gaming, social media. And even if we have a look right now on this chart, it's even a conservative number. The last numbers I heard about Zynga were more in the range of $7 to $8 billion. But anyway, why I was choosing this chart, because I want to have it as one big takeaway. If we have a look in value creation nowadays, it totally changed what was the status quo a couple of years ago. If you have a look at a company like Facebook, everyone knows Facebook. It's a company that's in the market for 4 or 5 years, and or 6 years. but it has on the secondary market a valuation of more than $50 billion, what's in fact more than Time Warner. But in the final end, we had a big internet bubble, so everyone is talking right now, it's the next big bubble and everything is coming. I don't believe so. And why? Because right now there's really value created, money created, and most of the businesses, Zynga, Facebook, all of them are cash flow break even, and they're generating revenues, and even big chunks of revenues. And the same thing, and that's pretty interesting, even if you have a look into the gaming space, and you see next to each other Electronic Arts and Zynga. Electronic Arts was dominating the gaming space for 20 years. That was the company when it was about games. And suddenly, some guys in Silicon Valley, they identify Facebook as a new distribution channel. They set up a company called Zynga. It's 3 years old. And this Zynga company has already a valuation on the secondary market that's higher than the one of Electronic Arts. So even someone who was or who is in the gaming space. But this shows right now the dynamics in the market. And I believe we're in a big change of the whole infrastructure. But what is it in the final end that drives people to buy virtual goods and to go for virtual goods? First of all, what virtual goods do, they evoke real emotions. If you're in a game, if you buy some goods, and if the whole context is suitable, just take a racing game and you have a car and you're involved in there, and after a couple of days you get the option to get a better car with better equipment, and you're just faster than the others. You are really involved. But you can only sell these kind of virtual games if the context is fitting. I heard so many people who were asking me and said, oh, I create something nice, I put it on Facebook, without having any context and believing they're going to make the millions out of this. It just will not work, because you need to entertain the people in the right context. Virtual goods are also a way of self-expression. This especially, Malte was saying it about it, what you see very strong in Asian markets, that they use in a kind of similar environment people are living, that they use virtual goods to express something, either express themselves or send flowers and things. And they're by far more educated, these markets, than what we see right now in Europe. And of course, the virtual economies are driving the ongoing use, and they turn in the final end the game or the website or everything in a kind of service. And we were reading about another example, but until last year, the big question is what people really buy. And until last year, this was the most expensive virtual item, and it was a Starship space in the virtual economy, Entropia, that was sold for $330,000 US. We read it before, that there was a stadium sold for more than $500,000 US. And why do people do it? Because they want to have it. And it's of course not my neighbors or probably your neighbors who have so much money, they just don't care. And that's really the interesting thing about the virtual goods or the item sales in general. And I will tell you on the next charts why. Just before, the overall market already reached $7 billion. So we are not anymore talking about, there's a little money and it's nice what these guys, these nerds are doing there in the internet. No, it's really a mass phenomenon, and it's a big business behind it. And it's even expected that this number is going to double within the next couple of years. So this is really, it's really a clear showcase of the speed, what's happening in the virtual goods market. But I wanted to come to this two charts before we start a discussion, because it shows very clear how the whole system works. And I got a couple of times, I got always these discussions, what's the best business model? If you're online, if you're distributing your content, many of you probably who have some TV formats, it's about a purely B2B business, selling it to the big broadcasters, and you get your money, and then the deal is safe. We are coming from a totally different world, where we first think in a B2C relationship, how to distribute goods. And what we identified in trying out everything, what was the key, and what's the key behind all these big transactions, it's a so-called freemium model, or that you deliver most of your content for free, and that you give your audience the possibility to voluntary or to free buy some goods for this. And it's pretty interesting that we see also like the 80-20 rule that you know probably from economies, we see that a small portion of our paying users are generating a big chunk of the revenues. And in fact, we developed that 10% of our paying users are generating more than 80% of the revenues. Then we have 75%, and that's pretty interesting, of our paying users who are just generating 5% of the revenues. And why does it look like this? That's in the final end the way it works. You see, we have massive transactions when it's about $2, just trying something. More advanced users maybe spend $5, $10, but the really money you make with users who are willing to spend $70, $100, even more than this. We have kind of some limitations, but I know, for example, other companies, other gaming companies, who sell a virtual armor for a knight. And I say again, it's a virtual armor, so it's not a real armor, and it's a virtual Kevlar armor. But this virtual Kevlar armor costs $50,000. And it's a Russian gaming company. And I know from them they're selling more than one. You can say on average they sell 2 per month. So they generate out of 2 users $100,000 per month. If you think about, if I'm selling $2 items, I need 50,000 paying users to generate the same amount of money than these 2 users who are willing to spend whatever they want. And when we come right now to the point that we say subscription model, what we learned over the years, it's a way to monetize, then you have a fixed price point. Then even if you say, I take an average $10 for my service, I'm pretty fine with this. With $10, you need 10,000 users spending the money. You need 10,000 paying users instead of having 2 really heavy payers who say, I have everything in life, and I'm willing to spend this money because I see a value in this virtual armor. And on one of the last charts, I wanted to show you the fast development that we see in this space. As a good example, we launched a game, it's even not a year old, it's about 9-10 months old right now, it's in the market. And in this game, Farmerama, we have already more than 140 million sheeps. And we were thinking about, we made a little bit of research, so we think of course of New Zealand, and we saw in New Zealand there are 34 million. So you see how fast you can grow something virtually if you have entertaining content for the people, and how fast a business can explode from this kind of view. And in the final end, if we have a look in what we are doing, we have already, unfortunately not all paid, otherwise it would be a lot of money, but we have already in our games daily more than 1 billion transactions happening. And this really shows how people are engaged in virtual goods and how active they are and how entertaining this segment is for many people. And I hope I could give you a little bit an insight, a little bit an introduction to virtual goods, and I'm looking forward to have a discussion right now with Malte and with all of you. Thank you.
Nils, thank you very much for this very insightful presentation and facts. And I put together 5 questions. We have 10 minutes or 11 minutes left, and maybe we could use and start off with those questions. You probably seen that, you know, it looks like a big business, and it is, and Nils didn't talk about profitability. It's a very profitable business, you can imagine. So I think the natural question comes next is, what does it take to create and to sell a virtual good? I mean, those guys obviously have a lot of great content, and they wonder, okay, how can I get involved in that?
First of all, we are all here. It's a kind of creative convention. It takes a lot of creativity, and as I said, the most important thing is a context. You cannot believe that you just can build a virtual good, let's say a virtual ring, and sell it for a couple of $1,000s and think consumers are so stupid and are going to buy it. So it's really about engaging people, having the right context to it. And I believe, and this is especially a trend that we see also right now as a company, we are developing more and more games right now based on Hollywood intellectual property. So we just came out with Battlestar Galactica. We're in the development of The Mummy. We are coming out with Universal Monsters, Frankenstein, Dracula, everything around it. And we believe, and that's what we see already in the launch of Battlestar, once you have intellectual property attached to a game, to a virtual world, it's working much, much better. And the hit rate is much better because you don't have all this education in the beginning. So I believe if you're dealing really with intellectual property, and it's in a way known, it's a perfect way to enter this market now.
So that's my second question, is the opportunity for the rights and content holder is getting their content and rights involved in games and then create an additional value to virtual goods?
Yeah. I think that's the point. It's about the additional value, and we had also quite hard years and months, in fact, in negotiating even these licenses because they're pretty big. And what I missed to say, we had one advantage that Universal or the Peacock Fund of NBC Universal invested into BigPoint, so it opened up the door. But anyway, then we were staying in the Hollywood offices and we were talking with the guys, and it was just enough to open the door. And the first idea already is like, pay me a big upfront and I'm out of the business. That's in general the mentality. But we see it more like you have a much, much bigger value in taking this money that you pay for an upfront and you invest it into a good product. And out of this product, you say, I distribute it globally and we share the revenues. There's a much, much bigger potential for everyone on the table. But still, and that's the point, we often saw there were some kinds of ressentiments that people said, better give me the money and I'm out. And I think this is something we are going to see. It's going to change. And in the fine end, it's like in every other entertainment industry, the consumer makes a call. And also in this case, while many, many times the music industry, they didn't want to believe that there's an MP3, that people want to use their iPad or their iPod and have the music over there. In the fine end, the consumer made the call. And if you try to tell them you only should go to the cinema, and you shouldn't consume this content in a virtual world, they will do it anyway. But then they will go to your competitor. And we saw the big win-win right now out of the partnerships that we say we can really expand the brand. So if we talk about licenses like The Mummy, what's a sequel in cinemas, we are able to keep this community then in the game. And we continuously at the same time when Universal comes out with a video or with a movie, we will at the same time launch a game. But we are pretty sure that we keep the audience much longer in the game and we keep it active, the IP.
Now, changing topics, talking about platforms, you're talking about the web mostly, and we all know that the big next revolution, which is currently going on, is mobile. What's your take on mobile and virtual goods at all?
I believe it will be massive. I was just a couple of weeks ago on the mobile conference in Barcelona. Everything I saw over there was really, really amazing me. I believe what we saw, and I just said it in the beginning a little bit, what we saw how the internet developed over, let's say, the last 15 years or the last 12 years to the point where we are right now. I believe what we will see in mobile will probably take 2 to 3 years. And it's quite interesting. I'm quite often on these conferences and I see people with iPads sitting and with iPhones sitting. And I asked the guy sitting with an iPad, how much time do you think you have your iPad? And most of people think, oh yeah, it's probably a couple of years. No, it's just a year. And we're talking about the next generation coming out right now, and the next generation in terms of smartphones and everything that we saw in the beginning, targeting really the wealthier, the first movers, is what we see right now with operating systems like Android working together with Taiwanese producers and really producing cheap handsets. So these cheap handsets costing $100, $120 will be in the market very soon. And at the later stage, a year later, when you have second-hand devices on the market, you will have a penetration in all the emerging countries, and then mobile phones and smartphones are all over in the market. And that's fact.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to cut on my last question because I think it's a great opportunity. If you guys have questions, we could answer them now or maybe after the session. Are there any questions from you right now, which you want to place to the
Hi, thanks for that. How much did Universal invest in your company and for what stake?
It was back in 2008, 35%. Were acquired by Universal on a $110 million valuation.
$110 million valuation?
Yeah.
Perfect.
already, if you think about it, it's already close to 2.5, 3 years ago. Turnover is 3-digit millions, and with more than 20% profitability.
Hey, I was just wondering, like, for a company like yours, is it, say, easier or cheaper to actually sell virtual goods to consumers, or just to go negotiate with some brands to actually have some, I don't know, displays, brand display in the game, or this kind of stuff?
You asked where we generate the money out of this. It's definitely having a B2C relationship with our consumers and selling virtual goods to the consumers. That's a big market. The other market, there's also of course, there's a big potential in advertising, everything around it, integrating virtual goods over there. But we could never come up to such revenues and such metrics. And I often say right now we are a company with 800 people. I believe if we would have just integrated ad sales, we would be 20 people now.
Any more questions? You fine? Got it? Watch the goods, you take it out and start tomorrow? And one other question.
How about inflation? How do you deal with inflation and the scarcity of the virtual goods? Clearly you could start manufacturing more if you like, and there has to be a certain scarcity. Is there a temptation of like, well, this good is very expensive, let's make a run on the market for it? How do you enforce that? And what's the consumer, rights involved in this? If I pay $1,000 for an item that becomes incredibly common later on, how am I going to feel about that? And is there any kind of agreement or expectation in place?
Very, very important question, and of course, it's inside of the company. First of all, when you think about the game and the lifetime of a game, we have games on the market that are still growing by users, by revenues, by all the metrics that are already 4 years old. And why does it happen like this? Because we are working every week on the product. The product 4 years ago compared to what you have right now, it's not the same anymore. It's by far a bigger universe, everything that's connected to it. And we are, of course, developing more and more levels, more and more content to it. And in everything we have, there's one key also in terms of virtual goods, and that's pretty interesting, and it's fast-moving consumer goods. We make a lot of money with this. So it's not just selling the one-time super stadium for $300,000. No, it's selling you the super gasoline for your car. And obviously, you know from your real world, that's unfortunately the case. You drive a little bit and you need to refill. And that's a way how we also generate money. And of course, what we always do, we have in the games a virtual currency, and we have a kind of a trade balance, and we screen it really on a daily level. Even if you come up with new items, new stuff, we must see how the inflation is acting on this. So very often we see there is in this kind, in one game, for example, pearls. There are pearls by user transactions pumped into the game. So we see we have too many pearls, and then we must think about how we get the pearls out of the system. And by this, we don't have, in fact, an inflation. And one other very important thing is that we have the virtual goods connected to the account. So there's not trading possible. You can only trade full accounts on eBay, but we don't have a secondary market somewhere in the internet where people can come and say, okay, I was playing this game, or I have some Chinese people sitting somewhere in the countryside who are sitting in a factory with computers and producing non-stop virtual goods and selling them in the Western world. These are ways how we have an inflation, but we were building in mechanisms to avoid it.
Is it under 25, under 30? What is your main demographic?
It's a pretty interesting question. We were shifting. So in the beginning, we always said, when the company started, because we were probably too many male guys, we were just able to make male games. And we had an audience 16 to 35 years. I would say 85%, 90% male. But since we came up with games like Farmerama and others, it totally shifted, and we were building up a totally new level of gamers and of audience. And this audience, you can say, is about 65% female and I would say more in the 35 years plus, the typical housewoman.
Okay, I think we're pretty much done on timing here.
Exactly now.
Exactly now. Nils, thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank you.
very much for joining in, for the good questions, and I hope you're going to have a good show.
Thank you.